Lecture 4. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Virtual University's course on Business and Technical Communication. In today's lecture, we will be looking at audience analysis. Audience analysis basically means that you as a writer need to analyze who it is that you're writing for. As in every communication, there is a person who is doing the communication, who is giving out the message, sending the message, and there's a person who's receiving the message. The person who's sending the message is you, and the person who's receiving the message is your audience. And you, as a sender, need to be very aware of who your audience is. And the way you send your message will vary according to who your audience is and what their needs are. In this lecture, you will learn to target your audience by identifying audience type, characteristics, and level of expertise. You will also determine your audience's needs by assessing their expertise and their purpose in reading the document. And you will also look at how to determine document density. People read technical documents for different reasons, and readers have varying levels of technical expertise. To be effective, technical writing must target its audience or audiences. Now, every type of writing has a particular type of audience, and technical writing has a particular type of audience as well. And later on in this lecture, we will look at what different types of audiences technical writing is catered for. You will target your audience by identifying your audience type and level of expertise, and also your audience purpose in using the document. When we talk of audience type and the level of their expertise, we also need to keep in mind what is the purpose of those people in reading the document that we are writing, because that purpose will also determine how we write that document or how we organize that document. And also we need to target our audience type by identifying the audience attitude towards both you and the content of your document. If the audience has a positive attitude towards you and your document, then you will need to write in a different form than if the audience has a negative or a skeptical attitude towards you and your document. अगर आपको ये अंदाज़ा है कि जो आपके पढ़ने वाले हैं वो आपकी बात को ज़्यादा शौक से सुनेंगे या ज़्यादा समझेंगे आराम से या उसको ज़्यादा पॉजिटिवली लेंगे, तो फिर आप उस डॉक्यूमेंट को एक फ़र्क तरीके से लिखेंगे बनिस्बत उसके कि अगर आपको ये अंदाज़ा हो कि जो आपकी ऑडियंस है वो कुछ रेजिस्ट करेंगे आपके डॉक्यूमेंट को एक्सेप्ट करने में. क्योंकि अगर आपको ये अंदाज़ा हो कि वहाँ रेजिस्टेंस होगी तो फिर आप उसमें को जो लिखने में ऑर्गेनाइज करेंगे और जिस किस्म की लैंग्वेज यूज़ करेंगे वो कुछ मुख्तलिफ होगी. All these considerations will influence specific features of the document, including organization, introductions, equations and mathematical models, graphics, technical terms, and level of detail. Now, these considerations of the attitude towards you and your writing, the audience type, the audience purpose, all these together will determine all of these factors like organization, introduction, technical detail, etc. And obviously, so all these are varying factors, and all these varying factors put together will determine all these different aspects of your communication. These features, especially the level of detail, contribute to the density of the document, the rate at which information is presented to the reader. Density of the document basically means how complex the document is, what type of detail is present in the document, and at what rate the information is being presented to the reader. If, for example, the reader is someone who might not be very comfortable with a lot of information given in the document, then the density of the document will be very low. There will be very few information or very few new information given in the document. That means that it has low density. However, if you feel that the audience is such who can understand and appreciate a lot of information altogether in one instance, then you will automatically put a lot of information load within your document, and in that case we will say that the document has a high density. अगर बहुत ज़्यादा information दी हुई हो तो high density document होता है, अगर एक document में कम information हो या बहुत simple information हो तो low density document होता है. You need to determine your audience's needs by assessing their expertise and their purpose in reading the document. Effective technical writing recognizes several types of readers, reflecting different levels of expertise. Now, there are different types of readers, and all types of readers have different levels of expertise. Just like there are different types of people in the world, and all people have different types of levels of knowledge. कुछ लोग किसी चीज़ में ज़्यादा एक्सपर्ट होते हैं, कुछ लोग किसी और चीज़ में ज़्यादा एक्सपर्ट होते हैं. हर इंसान हर चीज़ में एक्सपर्ट नहीं होता. तो इसलिए जब हम अपना डॉक्यूमेंट भी लिख रहे हों तो तब भी हमें ये सोचना होगा कि जिसने इस डॉक्यूमेंट को पढ़ना है वो इस पर्टिकुलर सब्जेक्ट में कितना एक्सपर्ट है. So there will be different levels of expertise, and these will range from somebody being an expert, or somebody could be a technician or a manager, or they could be lay persons, or we could be writing for mixed audiences composed of one or more of these four. Let's have a look at what we mean when we talk about writing for experts. Who exactly experts are, and what do we need to do when we are writing for them? There are two different types of experts. There are general experts and specific experts. Both kinds are readers with extensive technical knowledge of the document's subject matter. Now, when we say that somebody is an expert, obviously that means that they know a lot of what the subject is. So therefore, they will know a lot of what your document is talking about, especially the technical detail. An expert is one who knows the technical details. But still there are two types of experts. There will be general and specific experts. Let's have a look at the difference between the two. General experts possess extensive knowledge about a field in general, but they may be unfamiliar with particular technical terms, specific equipment, or recent advances in your document subject matter. Now, obviously, general experts have a different level of knowledge from specific experts. General experts may know things in general. They know enough about the technical aspects of the document, but they might not know specific technical terms or in-depth details. Whereas specific experts share or surpass your knowledge about a document subject matter. Specific experts will be those who will probably know at least as much as you, if not more, because they are specifics. They are specific experts in that field. They will definitely know a lot of the technical terms, so you will not need to define them for these people. Experts, whether they are general or specific experts, read documents, especially technical documents, for a variety of purposes. Firstly, they read them to maintain and expand their own general expertise, or to obtain specific answers to their own research and writing, or to evaluate a document's technical or scientific content. Now, they could also be reading them for a combination of all of these three purposes. They don't have to be separate purposes. A lot of the times the purposes do overlap as well. There are different strategies when you're writing for experts. If your audience consists solely of specific experts, you may not need to give extensive background or define key technical terms or acronyms. If you're writing for specific experts and you know that the readers are going to be specific experts, then a lot of the times you don't really need to define concepts or terms, because it's understood that those experts do know them and they are aware of them. You also do not need to expand on any acronyms or abbreviations that you have used, because again, it's understood that the experts would know what you're talking about. However, if your audience includes general experts, then you should provide sufficient background information and define any terms that they might be unfamiliar with. You will do this because general experts might be familiar with the area or might be experts in the area in general, but they might not be familiar with the specific concepts that you are talking about, or they might not at least know so much detail about the specific concepts that you're talking about. So then, if you feel that the audience is going to be of general experts, then you should define any terms, any technical terms that you're talking about, but not in a lot of detail. You don't have to go to the root of them, because they are still experts and they do have enough background knowledge, but you would need to define the specific terms that you are using. You won't also just present a concept to an expert. You will also need to explain the parts and processes in detail. Obviously, since they are experts, they will understand the processes and the details that you will explain. So you should go into detail about the explanations, about the parts, the processes, how something will happen, what needs to be done, what the different levels of in the process would be, to the expert because it's understood that when you are doing so, they will understand. You might not be doing this if you're writing for people who are not experts, because for them the purpose would be different and they might not need to know the processes and the different parts. But experts will need to know and they will understand as well. Now, when you're writing for technicians, technicians are people who construct, operate and fix things. For example, an office worker who's an expert in publishing is a technician, and so is the person who repairs your telephone or washing machine. Technicians are experts in what they do, but they might not be experts in other things, in things that they do not do. And the way technicians vary from experts is that technicians are actually handling things themselves. An expert might be someone who has the knowledge about something but might not be handling the actual applicability of that thing himself or herself, whereas a technician knows how to use and operate things and is actually actively doing it as well. Technicians have different levels of knowledge. They're often more expert than anyone else in how a particular thing works or why it does not work. They're also usually familiar with the common technical terms associated with the devices they use and the processes they perform. However, they may not be familiar with general or abstract concepts about a device or a process. Now, the technicians are experts, as I said earlier, but they might not know the theory of something. They would know in great detail about the practice of something, but not why it happens. Okay? For example, if somebody is a technician related to computers, they would know how to fix a computer, how to hook it up, how to network it, but they might not know the background detail of why, for example, the circuits work the way that they do. He will know how the circuits work, but not the why of it. Technicians will have a variety of purposes for reading technical and scientific documents. Firstly, they will want to read them to learn how to perform particular tasks. Now, if a technician is an expert in something but does not know how to perform a particular task, then he will need to look at a manual or a document or a scientific technical report, or specifically a manual, to learn how to perform that specific task within his field of expertise. For example, coming back to the computer example, if a technician is an expert in computers and he knows how to fix most problems related to computers, but there are specific problems or one specific problem that he or she does not know about, then they will need to read up on it in order to learn how to fix a particular problem that is causing them confusion. They will also read scientific and technical documents to learn how to, as I said, solve particular problems or perform particular tasks, and to learn about new devices and procedures relevant to their particular tasks. Now, there may be new things, new devices, new processes coming up in their field that they're not familiar with. So then they will need to read up more to learn what new developments have taken place and what new devices have come in and how they can use them and operate them. They will also read to acquire and expand background knowledge helpful to the performance of their tasks. As I said, a lot of the times technicians will know how to operate, how to actually apply the knowledge, but they may not have the background knowledge, they may not know the concepts. So they might also want to read to expand their horizons, to get more information about the background of how a thing works, so that they can be better when they are applying their knowledge. There are different strategies when you're writing for technicians. You need to keep introductions and background information brief. This is obviously because, again, as I said, technicians are more interested in the practice. They do not want the theory, and therefore, and a lot of the times they might not be qualified to understand the background theory. So therefore, it's better to keep introductions short, concise, and to the point. Also, apart from the factor of understanding, a lot of the times they might not even have the time to read the background because it's not of their interest. They will not create the time. So you would be wasting your time in writing a lengthy background. Also, you need to make information accessible, and we will talk about this in a couple of seconds. You also should provide short definitions or explanations of unfamiliar terms, tools, devices, or procedures. if you feel that there are any unfamiliar terms, कोई ऐसी बातें हैं या कोई आप ऐसे कॉन्सेप्ट्स डिस्कस करने लगे हैं जो शायद उन टेक्नीशियंस को ना पता हो या वो पहले उनसे फेमिलियर ना हो, तो फिर आपने उनको डिफाइन करना होगा और उनकी कुछ आपको एक्सप्लेनेशन देनी होगी. Now, coming back to making information accessible. When appropriate, you have to reduce information to instructions on how to perform a procedure or diagnose and fix a problem. Accessibility means that whatever information is given should be brief, to the point, and easily understood and accessible to the reader. Wherever possible, you need to make sure that that information, whatever it is that you are giving, is brief, concise, and the reader does not have to look for it. It's easily accessible. They just need to open the book or open the document and it's there. They can actually find it without having to search for it within a text. Wherever possible, also use graphs and tables. This is again because visually graphs and tables can give the information at a quick glance. एक चीज़ जो हमें एक पैराग्राफ फॉर्म में लिखी हुई हो उसमें से हमें इंफॉर्मेशन ढूंढनी पड़ती है. पॉइंट फॉर्म में लिखी हुई हो या ग्राफ्स और टेबल्स में फैक्ट्स और फिगर्स या कोई प्रोसीजर एक्सप्लेन किया हुआ हो, डायग्राम बना हुआ हो, तो वो हमें समझने में बहुत आसानी होती है बनिस्बत कि हम उस डायग्राम की डिस्क्रिप्शन में 10 जुमले हमें पढ़ने पड़ें. Also, you need to keep sections and overall instructions as short as possible. अगर लंबे सेक्शंस होंगे तो जाहिर है पैराग्राफ्स भी उनके अंदर ज़्यादा होंगे या लंबे होंगे और फिर उसमें इंफॉर्मेशन जो है वो इतनी एक्सेसिबल नहीं होगी, इतने आराम से समझी नहीं जा सकती, ढूंढी नहीं जा सकती. इसलिए बेहतर है कि आपके सेक्शंस जो हों वो जितने शॉर्ट हों उतने बेहतर हैं, जितने मुख्तसर हों उतने बेहतर हैं. और जो इंस्ट्रक्शंस भी हैं जो आप उनको बता रहे हैं कि आपने कोई चीज़ किस तरह करनी है, उसको भी जितने आप शॉर्ट तरीके से, जितने मुख्तसर तरीके से बता सकें उतना बेहतर है. Also, you need to index and cross-reference material. This means that if you have been talking about material previously in the document, then you need to refer to it, cross-reference between what has been talked about earlier and what you're talking about later. And indexing means that you need to maybe provide a list of where each section is. If you see in a lot of documents, manuals, you have an index where there's a number of either the page or section and a quick guide on how to access a particular problem. So it's very useful to then make an index so that the reader just needs to look at the index and go to their particular problem. They don't have to read the whole document to find what they're looking for. When you're writing for managers who are a completely different type of audience from technicians or experts, then you need to have different rules in mind. Managers, you will assume, are busy people who need to use documents primarily as tools in making decisions. Because managers read and review many documents, you need to be brief and to the point. Now, managers are people who might not be expert in everything that they're doing, but they will have a general knowledge of what they're doing. They might be experts in one or two fields, but they might be handling other fields, or they might be handling other areas in which they are not experts, but they do have knowledge of them. They vary in their technical knowledge. Many managers, especially in technical organizations, are general experts in a document's subject matter. Rarely, however, are managers specific experts in the content of a document. As I said, they have the subject knowledge, but they might not be specific experts in that subject. So they are general experts many times, but not specific experts. Managers usually supervise a number of projects, so they may not be familiar with every recent technological advance. And this is why they might want to read up on a technical document so that they can update themselves on the technological advances that have taken place. Often managers are specialists in fields such as marketing or management and have little detailed technical knowledge. They will know how to manage technical products or market technical products, but they might not know how those technical products operate or how they are made or how they can be fixed. And for that, they will need to rely on documentation so that at least they know what the technicians or the experts who are working under them are doing. The purposes vary for managers in reading technical documents and scientific documents. They read them to aid in making decisions, to assess current situations, to maintain their general level of expertise, to evaluate projects and employees. Obviously, if they have a knowledge of the technical documents that they're reading, or if they can understand them, it helps them in making decisions. It helps them when they're assessing current situations, and it obviously increases their level of expertise. But more than that, it helps them evaluate what their team is doing or what is happening in their project, so that they can assess, they can evaluate, and they can help in their team performing much better if they actually know what they're doing. In general, managers reach for the bottom line, a concise summary of the present situation and specific recommendations for action. A lot of the times, managers are not interested in all the details. They just want the bottom line, they want the end result or the conclusion. Any recommendations that are present, they might not always want to look at all the detail, or even if they do, they might initially be interested more in what the summary is of the document, and then when they have the time, they will look at more detail. There are different strategies when you're writing for managers than when you're writing for technicians or experts. For managers, you need to distill key information into an executive summary. This is so that they can get the gist of the matter in one glance or in one summary. एक मैनेजर के पास क्योंकि बहुत डिफरेंट प्रोजेक्ट्स होते हैं, वो बहुत चीज़ों पे काम कर रहे होते हैं, उनके पास इतना टाइम ज़रूरी नहीं है कि वो हर चीज़ की डिटेल पढ़ें. इसलिए उनकी अटेंशन अट्रैक्ट करने के लिए बेहतर है कि जो भी डॉक्यूमेंट में लिखा गया है उसको एक समरी के तौर पे शुरू में दिया जाए, और फिर अगर उनको समरी इंटरेस्टिंग लगेगी तो फिर वो आगे भी उस डॉक्यूमेंट की मज़ीद तफसील पढ़ेंगे. In general, you need to present information in order of importance. जो चीज़ ज़्यादा इम्पॉर्टेंट है उसको पहले लिस्ट करें, उसको पहले डिस्कस करें, और जो चीज़ कम इम्पॉर्टेंट है उसको बाद में लाएं, क्योंकि मैनेजर्स के पास इतना टाइम नहीं है कि वो अनइम्पॉर्टेंट चीज़ को पढ़ें. इसलिए अगर उनको शुरू की चीज़ें अनइम्पॉर्टेंट लगेंगी तो वो शायद आगे डॉक्यूमेंट पढ़ें ही ना और वो इम्पॉर्टेंट बात तक पहुँचे ही ना. इसलिए बेहतर है कि जो इम्पॉर्टेंट बात है उसको पहले रखा जाए. और जहाँ तक इम्पॉर्टेंस का सवाल है, ये भी ख्याल में रखा जाए कि जो इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज़ आपको इम्पॉर्टेंट लग रही है वो ज़रूरी नहीं है कि मैनेजर को इम्पॉर्टेंट लगे. इसलिए ये भी ध्यान में रखा जाए कि मैनेजर को क्या चीज़ इम्पॉर्टेंट लगेगी, उसके लिए क्या चीज़ ज़्यादा इम्पॉर्टेंट है, उस चीज़ को शुरू में प्रेजेंट किया जाए. ऑल्सो यू नीड टू एम्फसाइज इंफॉर्मेशन दैट विल एड इन मेकिंग डिसीजंस. ख़ास तौर पे अगर कोई ऐसी आप चाह रहे हैं कि कोई वो डिसीजन लें या कोई एक्शन इस तरह का लें, कोई चेंज करें कंपनी में, तो उस इंफॉर्मेशन को जो कि हेल्प करेगी इस डिसीजन लेने में, उसको शुरू में रखा जाए या उसको एम्फसाइज किया जाए. बेशक उसको आप विजुअली एम्फसाइज करें या इस तरह एम्फसाइज करें कि उसका जिक्र पहले करें, या उसको बुलेट पॉइंट करें या बोल्ड में करें या टेबल और ग्राफ में उसको हाईलाइट करें, लेकिन उस चीज़ को एम्फसाइज करें ताकि मैनेजर जो है उसको उसकी इंपॉर्टेंस का पता चले और उसको आसानी भी हो उस इंफॉर्मेशन को एब्जॉर्ब करने में, और फिर वो डिसीजन आराम से ले सके. यू नीड टू प्रेजेंट सफिशिएंट बैकग्राउंड इंफॉर्मेशन इन योर डॉक्यूमेंट. A lot of the times it's very important for managers to know why you're saying something and what had happened to make you come to writing the document, or what had prompted you to write the document, because it's important for them so that they can take a decision which will be based on what you have suggested in your document. Therefore, it's important that they know the background, that they have some background information. Maybe it's something that a process that you're talking about, so then you need to explain how that process happened, and now before you start talking about the changes that you want in the process. You also need to summarize all recommendations for action in your conclusion. You may in your whole document have written about, given an introduction, given a background, what had happened, why it had happened, what needs to be done, but in your summary and your conclusion you need to highlight what needs to be done, because a lot of the times the managers might just look at the executive summary in the beginning, briefly glance at the introduction, and then say, okay, let's come to the point. What do you want me to do? What is the conclusion you need? So therefore it's important to highlight the action that you want in the conclusion. बहुत बार ये होगा कि मैनेजर पूरी रिपोर्ट या पूरा डॉक्यूमेंट पढ़ेंगे ही नहीं, वो सिर्फ ये कहेंगे, हाँ जी इसका मतलब क्या है, हमें क्या इसमें से चाहिए, डिसीजन क्या लेना है, हमें ये बताएं, बॉटम लाइन बताएं. As we talked about earlier, they need to know the bottom line. So therefore it's important that in your conclusion you have all your recommendations, preferably in point form. You also need to segment information to allow easy reading of parts of the document. The manager is not going to sit for hours and read a long essay type document. You need to divide your document in segments, in sections, give clear headings, make clear sections so that the manager can skip to the section of their interest, or the manager can just look at the headings and have an idea of what is in each section and then decide if they want to look at the detail or not. You also need to, if necessary, put long technical explanations into appendices. As I mentioned, managers are not experts or technical experts, so if there is any technical information that you feel is important to be included in the document, then it should come in an appendix at the end of the document. Within the document, you will just refer to it as an appendix. For example, you will say, when you're talking about technical information, then you will say see Appendix A or see Appendix 1, and then attach any technical details, diagrams, facts, figures which might be confusing to read at that point, or which might break the flow of reading. You will put them as an appendix. अगर हम सारी टेक्निकल डिटेल बीच में इंक्लूड करेंगे डॉक्यूमेंट के, तो बहुत बार ये होगा कि जो मैनेजर है वो पढ़ते में या कंफ्यूज हो जाएंगे क्योंकि वो उस चीज़ के एक्सपर्ट ना हो शायद, या ये है कि उनके पास टाइम नहीं होगा, तो वो सोचेंगे अच्छा ये तो बहुत लंबा है, इसको बाद में पढ़ेंगे, और फिर वो चीज़ रह जाएगी. इसलिए बेहतर है कि वो जो टेक्निकल डिटेल्स ज़्यादा एलैबोरेट अगर हैं तो उनको आप उस पेपर के आखिर में अलग से अटैच करें और सिर्फ उनका हवाला दें पेपर के अंदर. Also, try to use graphs to summarize information. The use of graphs, figures, makes things more visual and it makes things easy to understand and see in a nutshell. And explain any unfamiliar terms that you might be talking about. They might be technical terms, so you need to then explain them if you feel that the manager will find them unfamiliar. If obviously that you know that the manager is an expert in this particular field, then you don't need to go into these explanations. So you need to decide what needs to be explained and what doesn't based on what you know about your manager. When you're writing for laypersons, a layperson is one who does not possess the technical knowledge of an expert or a technician, and also one who might not have maybe any idea of that field, maybe not even a manager, and therefore there will be a different way of writing for lay people. All of us read some documents as laypersons. No one is an expert in all fields. Even if we are experts in our field, even if you are a technician or if you are an expert or general or specific expert or a manager with a particular area, you will be definitely a lay person in other areas. If you are a computer expert, then you will be a lay person when it comes to talking about maybe language. So then if somebody is writing in technical terms about language or maths, then they need to keep in mind that this person is an expert in the area of computers but not in the area of mathematics. Laypersons will have different levels of knowledge. You need to understand that a layperson has knowledge, but not knowledge which is of a particular technicality. So do not assume that a layperson has a technical background. Unless you know that all members of your audience will understand a technical term or concept, explain it carefully, using examples and analogies with which the reader is familiar. Now, if you feel that all the people who will be reading your document know the concept that you're talking about, then you do not need to explain it or you do not need to highlight it. But if you feel that some of them will be familiar with it, but some of them will not know the details, then you need to use examples. You need to use analogies, show them similar situations or similar examples so that they can understand what it is that you're talking about. Some lay audiences can be classified as novices, people who do not yet possess technical expertise in a field but are in the process of acquiring it. Now, novices will be people who are learning. They might be new to that field, but they will eventually become experts. So, but at the moment, because they are new to the field, because they are novices, they are lay people. They are aspiring to be experts in that field. Technical textbooks at different levels, for example, are written to audiences that are starting out as laypersons but may become experts. A lot of the people, if if they do not know about their field, they will obviously need to read first to become experts in that field. So for example, textbooks then are written for novices, but then those novices later become experts. There are different purposes for which laypersons read technical and scientific documents. They read them to expand their general knowledge. As a layperson, I might not be an expert in computers, but a lot of documents related to computers I might just read or glance at because I would like to expand my knowledge about computers. That doesn't mean that I will be interested in reading a lot of technicalities about computers, but if there's a newspaper article related to the use of computers or advances in computer science, I would be interested in reading them, even though I am a layperson as far as computers are concerned. Also, laypersons would use them to help make decisions as citizens, consumers and investors. A lot of the times we are given information about a specific field as laypersons, but that helps us in finding out more about those areas and also in making decisions as citizens. A lot of the times as investors, I might not be, again going back to the same example, I might not be an expert in computers, but depending on what I read, maybe in a newspaper or in a company report, I might be interested in investing in IBM, for example, because I know enough about it to be confident that I might want to invest in this company. Also, laypersons would want to read technical documents to learn how to use a device or perform a procedure. If I buy a new television, I may not be an expert in how the television works. I may not even be a manager in a television company or a technician who knows how to put all the circuits together, but I would want to read the user's manual, the handbook of that television, so that I know how to operate it and how to use it, even though I am a layperson. That is what the documentation is made for. The manual is specifically designed for lay people so that they can understand how to hook the different parts or the cables, etc., and how to tune the channels. But the manual does not give the technicalities of what actually happens within the television set while I'm tuning the channels. That information would be for technicians. Or I might want to read a document to become an expert. Now, if I have aspirations to become an expert in the technology that is used within a television, then again I would start off by reading basic documentation and then read more documentation related to computers and then eventually become an expert. So even though I start off as a layperson, I might eventually become an expert. So तो हर layperson जो है उसके भी purposes for reading a specific document, वो जो purposes हैं, वो जो वजूहात हैं जिसकी वजह से वो एक document को पढ़ेंगे, वो मुख्तलिफ हो सकती हैं और उन मुख्तलिफ वजूहात के उनको मद्देनजर रख के ही आप अपना document तैयार करेंगे. There are different strategies when you're writing for lay people, depending on what the purpose is for reading, depending on what type of lay people they are, you will use different strategies. You will present extensive background information in your introduction. You will organize information from the familiar to the unfamiliar. Now, this is very important. If you start off with unfamiliar information, it will put the readers off. अगर बहुत इन्फॉर्मेशन शुरू में ही ऐसी होगी जो मुश्किल लगेगी रीडर को, क्योंकि वो एक ले पर्सन है, उसको इसकी बैकग्राउंड नॉलेज नहीं है, तो वो घबरा जाएंगे, डर जाएंगे और वो आगे पढ़ेंगे ही नहीं. तो इसलिए शुरू उस चीज से करना चाहिए जिससे वो पहले से फेमिलियर हों, जिससे वो कंफर्टेबल हों और फिर आहिस्ता आहिस्ता उनको अनफेमिलियर कॉन्सेप्ट्स एक्सप्लेन करने चाहिए या देने चाहिए. Also, you will simplify information to the level sufficient for the audience's purpose in using the document. अगर आपको लगे कि जो इन्फॉर्मेशन आप दे रहे हैं वो बहुत कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है और इस ऑडियंस जो है, जो पढ़ने वाले हैं, वो उनको इस चीज़ की अभी इस वक्त ज़रूरत नहीं है, वो ये डॉक्यूमेंट इस इन्फॉर्मेशन के लिए नहीं पढ़ रहे हैं, उनको इस डॉक्यूमेंट को पढ़ते वक्त इतनी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड इन्फॉर्मेशन नहीं चाहिए. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, कमिंग बैक टू द एग्जाम्पल ऑफ द टेलीविजन, अगर आप एक इंस्ट्रक्शन मैनुअल लिख रहे हैं कि उस टेलीविजन को किस तरह ऑपरेट करना है, तो उस टाइम पे उस ऑडियंस को, पढ़ने वाले को इस चीज़ की ज़रूरत नहीं है कि ये टेलीविजन के अंदर सर्किट्स जो हैं वो किस तरह ज्वाइन हुए हुए हैं. इसलिए आप वो जो इन्फॉर्मेशन है उसको एक सिंप्लीफाइड तौर पे बताएंगे कि अगर आप प्लग गलत लगाएंगे तो सर्किट्स खराब हो सकते हैं, लेकिन आपको उसकी डिटेल बताने की ज़रूरत नहीं है कि सर्किट्स में एग्जैक्टली होगा क्या कि वो ख़राब होंगे. You also need to explain all technical terms. जो भी आप टेक्निकल टर्म्स इस्तेमाल करें, जो भी ऐसी टर्मिनोलॉजी हो जो कि बहुत ज़्यादा टेक्निकल हो, उसको आप एक्सप्लेन करें, क्योंकि ज़रूरी नहीं है कि वो उस ऑडियंस को ये पता हो कि इसका मतलब क्या है. Also, you will need to illustrate and explain technical terms and concepts with analogies. For example, you will need to say things like, your hard disk is like an attic. If it is too full, you may have trouble retrieving a specific item. Analogies का मतलब ये है कि आप जो कॉन्सेप्ट बता रहे हैं उसको आप किसी ऐसी चीज़ से कंपेयर करें जिससे ऑडियंस ज़्यादा फेमिलियर हो. अगर आपको लगता है कि एक कॉन्सेप्ट ऑडियंस के लिए मुश्किल है, तो उसको आप किसी ऐसी चीज़ से कंपैरिजन दें जो कि उनके इर्द गिर्द उनकी एवरीडे लाइफ में वो इस्तेमाल कर रहे हों या वो देख रहे हों, ताकि वो उससे उसको कंपेयर कर सकें और फिर उनको समझ आ जाए कि हाँ, इसका ये मतलब है. या आप उस चीज़ को आसान बनाने के लिए आप कोई छोटा सा एनेक्डोट, कोई हल्का सा जोक, कोई ह्यूमर भी इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं ताकि उनको वो चीज़ याद रहे और समझ आए. When you're writing for a mixed audience, we talked about experts, technicians, managers, laypersons, etc. We can also be writing for a mixed audience. ज़रूरी नहीं है कि हर चीज़ जो हम लिखें वो हमें पता ही हो कि ये सिर्फ टेक्नीशियंस ही पढ़ेंगे या सिर्फ एक्सपर्ट्स या मैनेजर्स ही पढ़ेंगे. बहुत से ऐसे डॉक्यूमेंट्स होते हैं जो हर तरह के लोग पढ़ते हैं. So therefore, when you are writing for a mixed audience, you need to be clear that the document may be read by readers with different levels of expertise. Some of the audience will be at a higher level of expertise than other audience. Some of the audience may be specific experts, whereas some of the audience may be complete laypersons. So then it becomes slightly more complicated in how you target that audience. Computer documentation, for instance, may be written for experts who are familiar with all the hardware and software processes involved. Technicians who will install and support the application, a manager who may be deciding whether or not to purchase the software, and laypersons who may occasionally use it. Now, this is, although it's computer documentation, it may be targeted for all these different people. उसी documentation को देख के एक expert जो है वो उसको शायद बनाएगा. उसी डॉक्यूमेंटेशन को देख के एक टेक्नीशियन जो है वो उसको इंस्टॉल करेगा. उसी डॉक्यूमेंटेशन को देख के एक मैनेजर ये डिसीजन करेगा कि मैंने इसको ख़रीदना है कि नहीं अपनी कंपनी में इंस्टॉल करने के लिए ये कंप्यूटर हार्डवेयर. और एक ले पर्सन जो उसको इस्तेमाल करेगा वो भी शायद उसी डॉक्यूमेंटेशन को पढ़े. तो इसलिए उसमें डिफरेंट ऑडियंसेस हैं और उस हिसाब से आपने उस डॉक्यूमेंटेशन को लिखना है. So therefore, there will be different strategies when you're writing for mixed audiences. If appropriate, you need to create separate documents for each audience type. जाहिर है अगर आपके पास चॉइस है और अगर आप कर सकते हैं तो सबसे तो बेहतर यही होगा कि आप हर ऑडियंस टाइप के लिए डिफरेंट किस्म का डॉक्यूमेंट बनाएं, या कम से कम उस एक डॉक्यूमेंट के अंदर डिफरेंट सेक्शंस करें जो कि हर ऑडियंस टाइप के लिए हो. एग्जीक्यूटिव्स मैनेजर्स के लिए अलग सेक्शन हो, टेक्नीशियंस के लिए, एक्सपर्ट्स के लिए अलग सेक्शन हो, ले पर्सन्स के लिए अलग सेक्शन हो. तो फिर आपके लिए एज अ राइटर आपके लिए आसानी है, क्योंकि आपको फिर आप हर सेक्शन को आप पर्टिकुलर ऑडियंस के लिए टारगेट करेंगे. However, if that's not possible, then you need to obviously find other ways. Then you need to make sure that the language that you're using is accessible to all different types of audiences. You should also use an executive summary to present the gist of your document in understandable language. एक एग्जेक्टिव समरी जिस तरह हम मैनेजर्स के लिए एग्जेक्टिव समरी बनाएंगे, उसी तरह आप मिक्स्ड ऑडियंस के लिए भी एक एग्जेक्टिव समरी बनाएंगे, ताकि उस डॉक्यूमेंट का जो मेन आइडिया है, जो जिस्ट है, वो जल्दी से आपके ऑडियंस को समझ आ जाए. If any of your readers will not be experts or technicians, place all lengthy technical discussion in appendices and refer to them in the main body. जिस तरह हमने पहले बात की थी मैनेजर्स के हवाले से, उसी तरह अगर आपको लगे कि आपके मिक्स्ड ऑडियंस में बहुत से ऐसे लोग हैं जिनको ये टेक्निकल डिटेल जो आप बताना चाह रहे हैं या दिखाना चाह रहे हैं समझ नहीं आएगी, तो उस टेक्निकल डिटेल को फिर आप उस डॉक्यूमेंट की बैक पे अपेंडिक्स के तौर पे लगाएं. Also, you should segment the document into sections so that different audiences can read different parts. This is, as I said before, you need to put it in, if preferable, if possible in fact, put it in different parts so that the audiences can choose which part they are looking at. Also, you need to include in the front matter or introduction a short discussion of what sections are appropriate to each type of reader and for what purposes. It might be better to then give a brief introduction of each section in the beginning, so that the readers just need to look at the beginning and get a short detail of what section is appropriate for them. So they need to there might be small paragraphs or 2 or 3 lines about each type of reader and where they will find the information that is of interest to them. तो शुरू में ही इंट्रोडक्टरी सेक्शन में ही अगर आप हर रीडर के लिए को बता दें कि आपके मतलब की डिटेल इस सेक्शन में है तो उनके लिए आसानी हो जाएगी. Also, you should explain all technical terms thoroughly in any section that may be read by a lay reader. If you feel that in parts of your sections you are using technical terms and that section will be read by lay people, by people who are not experts, then you need to explain those technical terms. तो जो एक्सपर्ट्स उस सेक्शन को पढ़ रहे हैं वो उस एक्सप्लेनेशन को स्किप कर देंगे या इग्नोर कर देंगे, लेकिन कम से कम जो ले पीपल उस सेक्शन को पढ़ रहे हैं उनके लिए उसको समझने में आसानी होगी. Also, you should include an exhaustive glossary section explaining all technical terms in either the front matter or the end matter. जाहिर है जब आपके मिक्स्ड ऑडियंस है उसमें एक्सपर्ट्स भी हैं, टेक्नीशियंस, मैनेजर्स, ले पीपल सब हैं, तो फिर और अगर आपकी बहुत ज़्यादा टेक्निकल टर्म्स इस्तेमाल हो रही हैं तो फिर बेहतर ये है कि आपने एक ग्लॉसरी बनाई हुई हो या एक इंडेक्स हो उस टर्मिनोलॉजी की, ताकि जितनी टेक्निकल टर्म्स हैं उनकी आप डेफिनेशंस या उनकी एक्सप्लेनेशंस आप एक लिस्ट के तौर पे लगा के अल्फ़ाबेटिकल ऑर्डर में वो बैक पे या शुरू में इंक्लूड कर लें, ताकि फिर जहाँ अगर टेक्स्ट के अंदर, पैसेज के अंदर वो टेक्निकल टर्म्स आती हैं तो सिर्फ जो रीडर है उसको जाके उस ग्लॉसरी में उन टेक्निकल टर्म्स की डेफिनेशन या मीनिंग्स देखने पड़े. The readers of technical and scientific writing, whatever their level of expertise, read a document for 3 general purposes. They read them to acquire information, to help make decisions, and to learn how to do something. Now, to acquire information, readers at all levels of expertise read technical documents to acquire information. जो भी लेवल हो उनकी एक्सपर्टीज का, बेशक वो बहुत स्पेसिफिक एक्सपर्ट्स हों या ले पर्सन्स हों, कि कुछ ना कुछ तो उनको इन्फॉर्मेशन मिलती है हर डॉक्यूमेंट से, और वो इसीलिए पढ़ते हैं उस डॉक्यूमेंट को कि उनकी नॉलेज में इजाफा हो. Experts read current documents in their own fields to maintain their level of expertise and read documents in related fields to increase the breadth of their knowledge. जो अपनी फील्ड के डॉक्यूमेंट्स हैं उनको एक्सपर्ट्स पढ़ेंगे अपनी एक्सपर्टीज बढ़ाने के लिए. जो रिलेटेड फील्ड्स के हैं, जो डायरेक्टली उनकी फील्ड के नहीं हैं, उनको वो उन डॉक्यूमेंट्स को वो इसलिए पढ़ेंगे कि थोड़ी सी उनकी नॉलेज के उनके हॉराइजन्स खुले, थोड़े से उनको इर्द गिर्द का भी अंदाजा रहे. Furthermore, experts or technicians in one field are often novices in another field and read documents to acquire a basic understanding. Managers read to acquire both the general and the specific information necessary for them to supervise their staffs effectively and to function well in their organization. We've talked about this before. There are different purposes that people read for, and this is basically, I'm now giving you a summary of why these people may want to read specific documents. Laypersons read scientific and technical documents to acquire general knowledge about a subject or as novices attempting to become experts. To help make a decision, that's another purpose. Readers at all levels of expertise read documents to make decisions. Just like they read them to acquire information, in the same way, based on what they have read, they will be making decisions. An expert may read a technical study to decide whether or not to conduct a specific experiment or to use a new design element. An expert may read a technical study to decide whether or not to conduct a specific experiment or to use a new design element. A manager may need to make or approve a decision. Technicians use documents to decide on the selection of specific hardware or software and to determine the best procedure for performing a task. Laypersons may read documents to help select a particular product or investment. Document is also read to learn how to do something. All readers, whatever their level of expertise, sometimes read instructions to help them perform various tasks. They might read instructions to learn how they will perform that task or how they will perform that action. For example, a manager may read a document to learn how to use new budgeting software. An expert may read a document to learn how to use a new device, and so on. A layperson may also be using a document to learn how to use something. You also need to be familiar with the reader's attitude towards you and your organization when you're writing for them. If your audience views you as an expert, in some situations you may not need to offer lengthy explanations for your conclusions and recommendations. For example, when we go to a doctor, we do not always ask for a detailed explanation of a diagnosis or procedure. अगर आपको पता है कि आप अपने ऑडियंस की नज़र में एक एक्सपर्ट हैं, तो फिर आपको इतनी डिटेल उनको एक्सप्लेनेशन या जस्टिफिकेशन देने की ज़रूरत नहीं है कि आप आगे क्या करने जा रहे हैं या क्या कहने जा रहे हैं. जिस तरह भी मैंने डॉक्टर का हवाला दिया, हम एज अ मरीज जब हम एक डॉक्टर के पास जाते हैं तो हमें पता है कि वो डॉक्टर एक्सपर्ट है, तो फिर हम उनसे पूछते ही नहीं हैं कि आप ये हमें दवाई क्यों दे रहे हैं. इसी तरह जब आपके ऑडियंस को पता है कि आप एक्सपर्ट हैं, तो वो आपसे नहीं पूछ रहे या आपसे नहीं सुनना चाह रहे कि आप उनको ये इंस्ट्रक्शंस क्यों दे रहे हैं. इट्स इनफ फॉर देम दैट यू आर एन एक्सपर्ट एंड दे विल देन रीड व्हाट यू हैव रिटन विदाउट क्वेश्चनिंग यू. Similarly, a reader of a technical manual written by the manufacturer is likely to accept a statement of the possible causes of a certain type of error without further explanation, because the reader trusts the accuracy of the manufacturer. No explanation is necessary. On the other hand, if the audience does not know you or does not consider you an expert, or if the reader has had past negative experience with you or your organization, the document should include extensive explanations of your conclusions and recommendations to create trust and establish credibility. जाहिर है, अगर आपके ऑडियंस को आप पे ट्रस्ट नहीं है, तो आपको वो ट्रस्ट उनसे जीतना है और फिर आपको एक्सप्लेनेशंस कुछ देनी पड़ेंगी. Also, we need to consider audience interest in the subject. Your audience's interest in your document's content will affect its organization. If your audience is already interested in your subject, you may be able to shorten your introduction. If your audience is not interested in your subject, or if you do not know the level of their interest, explain why the material in the document is important to the reader. Another thing to consider is audience attitude towards subject. If your audience initially may be hostile to your major conclusions, you may want to present the problem first, then your analysis, then your conclusions or recommendations. अगर आपको लगता है कि जो आपने conclusions देनी है वो शायद audience को पसंद ना आए या वो initially उसको accept ना करें, तो फिर आपको प्रॉब्लम पहले बतानी होगी, उसको एनालाइज करना होगा, फिर कंक्लूजन देना होगा ताकि समझ आए कि सचमुच एक प्रॉब्लम थी और इसका ये कंक्लूजन है. ऑन द अदर हैंड, इफ यू बिलीव योर ऑडियंस टू बी रिसेप्टिव टू योर कंक्लूजन्स, स्पेशली इफ योर ऑडियंस इज अ मैनेजर, begin with conclusions and recommendations. If you feel that your audience is going to have no problem with what conclusions you're giving, then you don't need to give the background problem and give the analysis. Document density refers to the amount, type, detail, complexity and rate of information presented to the reader. The density appropriate to any document is determined by its audience and the ways in which the audience will use it. Matching the density of information to your audience is crucial for the success of any technical document. We talked about density earlier as well. The more the information in the document, the more dense the document is. So basically in this lecture, you learned to target your audience by identifying audience type, characteristics and level of expertise. You learned to determine your audience's needs by assessing their expertise and their purpose in reading the document. And you learned what document density is and how to determine it in your document. That's all for this lecture on audience analysis. Until next time, Allah Hafiz.